Hi guys, welcome to this video on Act 3, Scene 2 from Macbeth. And in this scene, we see Macbeth and Lady Macbeth talking on the eve of their big feast for the Thanes and those that were loyal to Macbeth and came to Scone to see him crowned as king. In this scene, we see how Macbeth's mental health is starting to deteriorate even more. We see Lady Macbeth trying desperately to hold on to him and stop him from slipping into this madness that's going to result in the end for both of them. But towards the end of the scene, we see her losing some of her power over him and him breaking away from her by not revealing all of his plans. This scene obviously then deals with mental health, it deals with changes within their relationship, but it also deals with the literal and metaphorical consequences of treason. So, before we start looking at the annotation, let's have a little listen to the scene.
Is Banquo gone from court?
Aye, madam, but returns again tonight.
Say to the king, I would attend his leisure for a few words.
Madam, I will.
Naught's had. All spent. When our desire is God without content. 'Tis safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. How now, my lord? Why do you keep alone? Of sorriest fancies your companions making, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with him they think on. Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done.
We have scotched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself, whiles our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth. But let the frame of things disjoint, and both the worlds suffer, ere we will eat our meal in fear, and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. Better be with the dead, whom we to gain our peace have sent to peace, than on the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. Duncan is in his grave, after life's fitful fever. He sleeps well. Treason's done his worst, nor steel, nor poison, malice domestic, foreign lever. Nothing can touch him further.
Come on! Gentle, my lord. Sleek o'er your rugged looks. Be bright and jovial among your guests tonight.
So shall I, love. And so I pray thee you let your remembrance apply to Banquo. Present him eminence both with eye and tongue, and safe the while that we must lave our honours in these flattering streams, and make our faces vizards to our hearts, disguising what they are.
You must leave this!
Oh, full of scorpions is my mind. Dear wife. Thou knowest that Banquo and his fleants live.
But in their nature's copy's not eternal.
Now there's comfort yet. They are assailable. Then without jocund, ere the bat hath flown his cloistered flight, ere to black Hecate summons the shard-born beetle, with his drowsy hums hath rung night's yawning peal, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note.
What's to be done?
Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. Come, sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day, and with thy bloody and invisible hand cancel and tear to pieces that great band which keeps me pale. Light thickens, and the crow makes wing to the rooky wood. Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, whiles night's black agents to their praise do rouse. Thou marvelst at my words, but hold thee still. Things bad begun make strong themselves by ill. So, prithee go with me.
Okay, so we start the scene with Lady Macbeth on her own, worrying about Macbeth and his current mental state. So she says, "Naught's had, all's spent, when our desire is got without content." And this is the idea that she feels that it is for nothing. She feels that the murder of Duncan and their subsequent rise to King and Queen was nothing if they can't be happy, if they can't find some sort of joy in life. She then says, "'Tis safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy." So 'tis safer to be that which we destroy, their old life. It's safer to be living their old life than by destroying everything around them. They have to live in this kind of paranoid worry that everything's going to come crashing down at any moment, symbolised through the oxymoron doubtful joy. That could be a good way of thinking about paranoia. Doubtful joy. On the outside, you are appearing to be happy, but on the inside, you're feeling really, really insecure. Within this as well, we see a deterioration in Lady Macbeth. She starts using rhyming couplets here, maybe mirroring the language of the witches, certainly mirroring the language of a lower character, showing that she's starting to fall somewhat. And she also uses a large number of plosives here: desire, destroy, destruction, dwell, doubtful. All of these plosives indicate some sort of pain, some sort of internal pain. And I think it's connected to the worry that she has for Macbeth and his current state of mind. Now, as we're looking at Macbeth and Lady Macbeth in this scene, consider how they are different. Consider how they are different and how they have changed from the beginning of the play. Macbeth was a strong, confident, capable character. He's now becoming more unafraid. He's starting to unravel. Lady Macbeth was able to manipulate and control Macbeth. There is less manipulation and less control of Macbeth in this scene. So she asks him, "Why do you keep alone?" Indicating that Macbeth is isolated, that he is choosing to have no company. He's withdrawing into himself. She then says that he is using those thoughts which should indeed have died with them they think on. And I think there is some ambiguity within this statement, that she is trying to read Macbeth's mind, and it could go one of two ways. This could be thoughts of guilt around the murder of Duncan. The them that he's thinking of is Duncan, but at the same time, it could be violent thoughts, and the them that they are thinking of is Banquo and Malcolm and those within Scotland that would oppose Macbeth. So using those thoughts in this sense would be that Macbeth is still having these violent thoughts that he was having back at the beginning of the play, and she's concerned that if he becomes even more violent, then they're going to be found out and it's going to be the end of everything. She says what's done is done, indicating for Lady Macbeth that everything is over, and that she doesn't think about it and that she's moved on. Now, back when I was talking about Lady Macbeth not fully understanding murder, I think that this is another example of it. She doesn't really understand how the murder has stuck under Macbeth's skin, and how he's living every day with the thoughts and the impact of the deed that he has done. For her, it's just done and dusted. Macbeth replies, "We have scorched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself whilst our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth." And again, there is some ambiguity around this. The snake that he talks about could refer to Malcolm. The idea that he is in England and he's going to come and he's going to get them. It could also apply to Banquo, that he has scorched the dangers to his throne, but he hasn't killed all of the dangers yet. So I think this is leaning towards Macbeth and the violent thoughts rather than the guilty thoughts. He says, "But let the frame of things disjoint. both the worlds suffer. This is a reference to the physical world, so the things that are happening around him, the people that he's going to inflict pain on, but also the spiritual world, you know, the place where your soul goes when you die, heaven, hell, those kinds of things. And then with reference to the punishment of traitors, he says, and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. This is showing that he has, again, no peace, that he's finding it difficult to sleep, that he's having terrible dreams, which would all be a consequence of going against the great chain of being, the divine right of kings, and God's punishment of traitors. He says, better be with the dead, which foreshadows his own death and shows the level of pain that Macbeth is currently going through. He's starting to wish that he himself were actually dead. He says, whom we, talking of the dead, to gain our peace have sent to peace. This is a juxtaposing image here. He says, to gain our peace, to rise in the world and become powerful, we have sent to peace to mean killed. Better to be dead than on the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. He says here, it's better to die than to not be able to rest. It's better to just be dead and in the ground and be living this life where he cannot sleep. He then makes an ironic, humorous statement about Duncan. He says Duncan is in his grave after life's fitful fever. He sleeps well. And again, there is irony in that he's beginning to envy the dead. He's beginning to envy Duncan. He says of Duncan, nor steel, nor poison, malice, domestic, foreign, levy, nothing can touch him further. He sees death as the ultimate peace in life. Now, with all of that, think, how is Macbeth's mental health portrayed here? He's having suicidal thoughts. He's envying dead people. He is wishing for peace and sleep more than anything in the world. This sets him up very differently to the confident Macbeth that we see at the beginning of the play. Lady Macbeth then tries to instruct him. She says, sleek o'er your rugged looks, be bright and jovial. She's trying to force him to be normal, basically. She knows if the Thanes see him in this state, they're going to think that something's amiss. But at the same time, this once more links to false face. She's asking him to put on a false face. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. Well, in this instance, Macbeth's false heart knows that he's murdered Duncan, that he's sent people out to kill Banquo. His false heart knows these things, and she's asking him to put on a false face to cover that up. Macbeth says here, let your remembrance apply to Banquo. This foreshadows Banquo's murder, because at this point, Lady Macbeth doesn't know about the plot to kill Banquo. She's not aware that Macbeth has sent people to get Banquo. Okay, Macbeth says, unsafe the while, showing that he sees the lies they're getting themselves into as unsafe, and he's trying to get Lady Macbeth to cover and make everyone feel that everything is fine and distance Macbeth from the impending death of Banquo. He says here, and make our faces vizards to our hearts. So a vizard is a full metal helmet that would be really difficult to see through. And so if you're making your face vizards to your hearts, you're saying that your face shouldn't reflect what you're feeling in your heart. Again, false face must hide what the false heart doth know. He wants to appear on the outside like everything is fine, when inside he knows that Duncan is about to be murdered. And then we have this really key quotation from Macbeth. This couples up with lots of other things that he says. You know, he talks about having bloody thoughts, the hallucination of the bloody dagger, some of the things that he says later in the play. He says, "Oh, full of scorpions is my mind." And this is a really ambiguous phrase that I think can mean one of three things. The first, scorpions have connotations around poison. So is this him saying that his mind is full of poison, that his mental health is deteriorating? It could also be violence. Scorpions are violent creatures that attack things, kill things, have poisonous tails, all of that kind of stuff. So is Macbeth saying here that his mind is full of violence? Finally, scorpions as poisonous and sneaky could be seen as traitors? Is he saying here that everywhere he looks, he sees traitors? He sees people wanting to commit treason against him? You know, remember, please, we must be able to argue and write about all meanings when dealing with ambiguous phrases. And this quotation will work in a lot of different circumstances for Macbeth. So that could be a really useful angle to go down when writing your essays. We then talk about Banquo and Fleance. Lady Macbeth they're saying nature's copy is not a turn. So this is her saying that Banquo and Fleance aren't immortal. You know, they're going to die at some point. And Macbeth says there's comfort yet. They are assailable. So he's saying that he can get over them. He can sort it out. He says, the bat hath flown. So this is before night. And think about the connotations around bats. You know, they link with the supernatural. They're seen as bad omens. You know, they're certainly not very well liked creatures. He says, to Black Hecate's summons. Hecate is the leader of the witches, so this links more with the supernatural. He says, before the night is finished, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note. Please note the plosives here. I think linking with anger, linking with the foreshadowing of the violence that is going to be committed. But this is, before the night is over, Banquo will die. However, Macbeth sees this as worse than Duncan's death. He says it will be a deed of dreadful note. And is this because Macbeth himself isn't doing the killing? He's sent assassins. He's recognising that this murder is going to be less honourable than Duncan's murder? Or is it that Macbeth was a lot closer to Banquo? You know, they were best friends. Duncan was Macbeth's king, and I'm sure that he liked him a lot, but Macbeth has fought in wars with Banquo. They have a bond. So this is going to be quite a hard thing for Macbeth to go through. Lady Macbeth asks what's to be done, looking for details of the plot, and this is where we see their relationship change. Macbeth says, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. So Macbeth won't tell her his plans. Now before this point, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have discussed everything. They shared everything. And here Macbeth isn't sharing something with her. I think this marks the point where Macbeth starts to drift away from Lady Macbeth, and I think that is a further indication of his corruption, that he's almost turning his back on this relationship with this woman who's really, really supportive of him. But he says, till thou applaud the deed. He feels that she will be impressed by this violence. He feels that she will appreciate what he has done. He then says, come sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day. And this is similar to in Act 1, where Lady Macbeth said, pull me in the dunnest smokes of hell. And Macbeth says, you know, stars, hide your eyes, you know, cover up the stars kind of thing. He wants darkness again, so that God can't see what is happening. He understands that this murder of Banquo is unnatural. You know, it's not a fair murder. And he doesn't want God to see what's happening, in case their punishment becomes even more. Okay, then goes on to say, and with thy bloody and invisible hand, cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale. And he's talking about his friendship with Banquo here, that great bond which keeps me pale. The bond that he feels with him, he wants it torn up, he wants it done with. There is then a little bit of bird symbolism. The crow makes wing to the rookery wood. Crows have symbolism around death and evil. They foreshadow death. And then we get some nice light dark imagery. He says, good things of day begin to droop and drowse, whilst night black agents to their praise do rouse. So he's saying that as the day ends, the evils of night come out to prey on the weak. The symbolism behind this is that goodness again is dying, goodness is ending, and darkness and evil is on the rise. And certainly the actual act of murdering Banquo is a heinous, evil, horrible thing. But particularly when you think that Macbeth is sent after Fleance too. He's now moving on to also trying to kill children. He then finishes with, things bad begun make strong themselves by ill. So he's saying that things that are evil to begin with only get stronger by continuing to commit evil, by continuing to do evil things. This, again, linked with foul is fair. He's saying that something that is bad only gets better through more badness. Now, we could think about this in a couple of ways. Is this Macbeth under the full control of the witches? Is he stealing their rhetoric for his own thoughts? Or are they kind of pumping this into him through their spells? But at the same time, we could think all Macbeth knows is violence and murder. So he's responding to the stress of becoming king and all of the guilty thoughts with more violence and murder. Remember, he was a soldier. But regardless, we need to talk a little bit about this, the cycle of violence. The cycle of violence that runs through this play begins with Duncan trying to squash a rebellion. He's trying to defend his lands. This then goes on to the treachery of Macbeth in the murder of Duncan, and then subsequently Macbeth begins to murder his friends in an effort to consolidate power. This cycle of violence could be looked at as the cycle of violence in real life. You know, if you look at the history of kings in this country, these kinds of things have been happening for centuries. So at this point within the cycle of violence, Macbeth is killing friends through his own paranoia. Okay, so we'll stop there. I hope you found that useful, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye bye.